everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. Today it is time for a new cosplay project, and it's one that I wasn't actually intending on doing this year until I found pretty much the perfect fabric for it, and that is Kirsten's summer dress. So this dress was not on my docket as of the beginning of this year, but as you might have seen in my recent spring thrift haul video, I wound up finding this fabric right here from Goodwill, and it is pretty darn decent for this. So I figured, why not go ahead and make Kirsten's summer dress out of it, and probably make like an entire bustle dress out of it at some point too, because I have so freaking much of this fabric. Like, this is heavy to hold. So this dress is really quite interesting because we have a lot of the hallmarks of mid-century fashion because, you know, they did a good job, they researched, etc. So just some of the things that we're looking at here is we've got this like gathered front here, it gathers into the waist. We have a really wide off the shoulder here, which honestly I feel like is a little more 1860s and 1850s, but you know, whatever. And it's piped nicely along the arm's eye and also along the bottom of the sleeve. And then in the back it is also gathered into the waist. Now Kirsten's velcros up the back, but she does actually have non-functional buttons in the front, which would have been a popular way to close a summer dress. And then she's got that horizontal like contrast of the band for the waistband. And then on the skirt, we've got just a basic gathered skirt that has pin tucks that go down at the bottom. So overall, I think this should be a relatively simple project. I know, famous last words, but I'm hoping that I might even be able to get this done in just a couple of weeks. That said, there is going to be an interruption in the middle of this project because I am actually flying to the UK in like 6 days, I think, from this point when I'm filming this video. So yeah, there's going to be an interruption in like the sequence of videos that you see of this project, because you'll see a part one, this video that you're watching right now, and then you will probably see an England vlog, maybe even a couple England vlogs, and then you will see a part two. So yeah, excuse that interruption, but I'm hoping that I can get a fair amount done this week. So the first thing is that I was looking at patterns for this project, and I have two potential patterns that I could use that are both pretty similar. So we have Simplicity 4551, this one right here, and then we also have Butterick 5831, this one right here. So as you can see, they are both like gathered front type dresses, and this one's is specifically designed to be a sheer dress. Like, it comes with the pattern pieces for a fitted under portion, like underlining to the bodice as well, whereas this one does not have that. However, I didn't own this pattern when I went to go make a sheer dress several years ago, so I actually used this pattern for my 1850s sheer dress. And then I also, you might remember if you've been watching me for a while, used this pattern based on the lining that I had created for the sheer dress. I used this pattern for my Meg dress that I did, like, can I make an 1860s dress in a day type video. I'll link that one down below if you haven't seen that yet, but I used this pattern basically for that as well, or kind of what I had interpreted from this pattern for that as well. So I know that I have bits of this pattern that work well for me. However, they were worn over a corset. I am not making this to wear over a corset. I am planning to wear this to a picnic in early June. In fact, if you are in the Puget Sound area and you are interested in American Girl and cosplay, please do come to the American Girl Cosplay picnic. I will link all the information down below in the description, but it's going to be on June 10th, 1 p.m. at Seward Park, and hopefully I will be wearing Kirsten's summer dress to that picnic. So anyway, I pulled out the bodice patterns for both of these, and honestly, they are pretty darn similar. So these are the bodice patterns. And if I line them up here, you can see first off that they are both immensely, immensely wide in the shoulders. Like, in the 1860s, or also in Kirsten's case, her 1850s dress, there is definitely a dropped shoulder. So like, it should go off the shoulder a bit, probably to about right here. But I held this up to my shoulders, and as you can see, it eats my entire sleeve. That's how wide this is. Like it's just insane. They're both basically the same amount of width. And then the main difference is that the Simplicity pattern is also hugely wide across too. So that's what you're seeing on the outside here is the Simplicity pattern, whereas the Butterick pattern is about an inch longer in length, which I find very interesting. Now the Butterick pattern has 8 inches of ease across the bust, which is a lot. This is the gathered portion of the Butterick pattern, but still, that's a lot. If I remember correctly, however, the Simplicity pattern actually has 11 inches of ease because why? I have no words. I don't know. I don't know why they did that. Yes, it's a gathered front. It doesn't need to be that gathered. And frankly, with Kirsten's, she only has a little bit of like poof over the bust portion. Really, like the gathering goes down into the waist, but there shouldn't be that much ease across the bust. So although I do plan to kind of start with one of these two, probably the Butterick one, as my base, I am going to be reducing it significantly. One of the reasons though that I like the Butterick pattern is that it does actually have a button front closure. So you can see the buttons down the front. For some reason it is buttons to here and then the top doesn't have buttons. I think you can see that a little better in the line drawing here. I don't know why they did that. I mean, she has it closed with like a brooch, but I want buttons all the way up. So I think that should be pretty easy to alter to just make that fully button front. And then my buttons are going to continue down into the skirt. If I remember correctly from the Simplicity pattern, I think it has like a dog leg closure, which means that basically you have like closure here and then it kind of has a flap across and then like closure here. So it's not actually aligned. But I'm hoping, I haven't read all the instructions yet, but I'm hoping that this one actually has just full down. It does not have buttons that go below the waist, but I can easily add that in. I'm going to be using just my own invention for the skirt pattern. And by my own invention, I mean that it is going to be straight panels, gathered up, pin tucks on the bottom. That's it. And then the buttons in the front, center front. So the very first thing that I have to do, other than figure out the patterning, is I want to do a dye test on this fabric because I am hoping that I can tea dye this whole fabric. Now this is a poly cotton blend, so I do not know how it will take the dye because it is not pure cotton, but as you can see it is a lot brighter than her actual dress. So my plan is to tea dye it to kind of tone it down a little bit, and ideally I would like to tea dye it after it's all done because this is a lot of fabric. I don't know how much I'm gonna need, and it's also like the piping, I could just do white piping and dye that is kind of my thought. So yeah, that is my question of how's it gonna do. So I think I'm actually going to go dig through my cabinets right now, hope that I have some extra tea that I don't mind using for dyeing, as in like some cheap English breakfast or something like that, and give that a test and see if we can make this a little more muted. All right, I have done my dye test, which is right here, this little swatch right here. It was honestly in the tea for like such a short amount of time, but then I washed it out and this is the color that it got. I was worried that if it went any longer, it would have gotten too dark, because just for comparison's sake, you can see like the cream level is pretty similar. However, as you can tell, the stripe is still really, really bright. So I posted a poll on Instagram saying, okay, which one should I use? This one or this one? And you like almost unanimously it was use this one. But then I realized, okay, what about the backside? Because the backside's a little bit more dull. And so I posted another poll on Instagram that was which one should I use between the original choices versus the undyed back versus the dyed back. And it seems like the majority decision is to use the backside of the fabric with the tea dyeing. So my plan now is to use the backside of the tea dyed fabric. Now I have already actually ripped some skirt panels because I did the math for the ratio of like how big is Kirsten's waist versus the bottom of the skirt and what would that equate to like panel wise. Now this is super wide fabric. I think it's like 96 inches or something like that wide. It's very, very wide. However, one panel is not enough to get that ratio. So it looks like actually the best bet is to do 1.5 panels. So that's what I've done here. I've got 1 panel and the half panel here. And I also did the math to figure out how long they would need to be because of the 2 pin tucks. And I took her pin tucks and scaled up the length for like, okay, if her finished length is so long and I want my finished length to be like about 31 inches, how long are these pin tucks going to be? How deep is her hem? Because her hem is pretty obvious, I feel like. So I wanted mine to kind of have that same machine sewed obviousness to it. So I did that math and it turns out that my tucks need to be 1 3/8 inches deep. And that means the total length is 39.75 inches. And then the tucks will wind up being taken out of that. The hem will wind up being taken out, etc. So that's what I've got with these 2 panels. And now I have to figure out how do I put them together, potentially creating more seams, that's not a problem, but how do I put them together to be able to have a center front seam and seams somewhere nearish to the sides to have pockets put into them. So I haven't yet figured that out. That is my next step, to like figure that out, and then I will cut out the pockets as well and sew them together. But I can't just put like the 1 smaller panel in the front. I could potentially, what I'm kind of thinking is probably to divide that 1 panel into 2, which would put the pockets kind of in like the front. I can't step backwards because there's literally a cat behind my feet right now, but to put the panels like right here, which that would be okay for me for pockets. Like I don't mind when pockets are a little bit farther forward. Generally you just don't want them further backwards. So anywhere between like here and here is generally good for me for pockets. So yeah, I think that probably just dividing that front panel in 2 so that I can have a center front seam, which is where the button placket will go, and then having the rest of it go all the way around, because I don't need a center back seam like she has, because I'm not gonna have a Velcro up back. I'm gonna have functional buttons. So yeah, that's my plan. Since I know that by mentioning Dora you all want to see her, let me fix that for you. Here's Dora, trying to be a trip hazard. She spent most of the day outside in the heat because she's crazy. But I'm glad to have her toe beans back inside now. Let me say hi. Yeah. Say hi. Okay, anyway, I'm going to go cut out some pockets and put together a skirt, and I will probably see you tomorrow. So you know how in that last clip I mentioned that I was going to use the reverse side of this fabric? Well, that was 2 days ago, and when I put it together today, I completely forgot that that was a thing until I was pulling up the gathering threads. So at this point, the skirt is partially done. What we have here are pockets hiding somewhere. There we go. There's some pockets. We've got them. They're kind of like here and here, so a little bit more front. And what's going to happen next is that I'm going to put part of a facing. I think that's what's going to happen next. We'll see, because that might be easier to do actually once I have the bodice, which probably is not going to be in this video. But if I don't put the facing in, the other thing I'm going to do is just do up the center front seam. Now, because I'm going to be putting a funky little facing in, like Kirsten's, which I'll show you in a second, I actually need a 1-inch seam allowance here instead of a 1/2-inch seam allowance. So this is going to be really, really wide, whereas the others are just regular 1/2-inch. But I'm going to sew at least part of that up, even if I don't do the facing right away, because I want to put my pin tucks in. So pin tucks, and also the hem will be next. Since this is just a straight panel skirt, I don't have to worry about the hem dropping out or anything like that. There's no bias involved here at all. So yeah, probably the next thing then, since I think the facing is going to wind up going all the way up the bodice, is I'm going to start probably about like here-ish and just sew it together from here down with a 1-inch seam allowance, really, really wide seam allowance, and then put my tucks in the bottom. Okay, so I've done up the front seam here. I was taking pretty good care to match the pattern so it doesn't look off, which I am pretty pleased about, but I'm trying to figure out how to get the little V part. And this right here is what I'm talking about. Do you see how this comes out in a little diagonal like that for the facing? So the facing itself is going to go all the way up the dress like I mentioned, but I want to figure out how to get that little V right there. So looking back at my skirt here, I think what's going to happen is that I have to cut like a little diagonal slit down below here so that I can then, like, with my facing, extend this out so that that will overlap over this. I'm pretty sure that's what's going on. And in fact, on Kirsten's here, you can see that it has been cut. So maybe I can just figure out exactly where it's cut. Hers is sewn shut, so like I can't really get in there too much, but hopefully if I can figure out where the slit is in relation to where the little V is, then I can figure out how that cut works. Okay, I've stuck a little pin through here so that it goes from where the slit is. So you can see that it is just a tiny bit below where this V is right there. That's what I'm kind of pulling up with my thumbnail. So it'll just be like a little hair's bit below. Hers, again, like isn't finished off or anything like that. So I guess I don't maybe have to worry too much about the facing. I'm not sure if that means that with hers, they literally just extended it and turned it under. It's sewn shut, so I can't tell, but I kind of think that might be the case since hers isn't actually functional. It is just sewn shut, and then there's the Velcro on the back. Mine's gonna be functional, so that's why we need a facing, but I think it'll be the same sort of thing to get that look going on there. And then that slit is only in the left side here. So this side stays normal. Well, I cut a little slit below here, but it's not letting me like get this out because it still has to get past this. So I'm not sure if that means if maybe I have to like bring it up and cut the slit also right here. I might have also cut the slit too low. I'm not really sure, but I need to be able to get this part out in front of this part. As you can see, I did cut that vertical piece, and I think that was the right answer because, well, probably I should have cut it at an angle to begin with, but now like when I sew in the facing, I think I can get this look going on there, and then this part will be part of the seam allowance, but that will give me this diagonal that overlaps over here. This is really hard to do one-handed, but I think hopefully you get the gist. This next thing that I'm doing here is just a really thick double turned hem. So it's 1 5/8 inches deep, and that is just turned twice. Now I'm going to machine stitch this. Normally for historical, I would hand stitch, but her skirt has really obvious machine stitching on that hem. So you know what? Mine is going to too. So now what I'm doing is I've taken a scale measurement from the bottom of the skirt, though you could also do it from the stitch line, it's up to you, all the way up, folding this up and going to the edge of this little tuck right here. So basically all of that. And then I scaled that up to my length and wound up with 7.19 inches, which of course is not a, you know, nice number, but it's approximately just a little under 7¼ inches. So that's what this mark is right here. I am now going to go around the entire skirt, mark that all the way around. I'll probably do one every like few inches. Luckily, because this is stripes, I can kind of use it as a grid and just look for my like 90-degree angle. And that is going to become my fold for the bottom of the pin tuck. And then from there, I am probably going to go ahead and just make another mark up here, and that mark is going to be 1 3/8 inches deep. Honestly, I could do it down below as well, because basically what's going to happen is either way, you're going to get this fold here, and then you are going to sew 1 3/8 inches either on this side or on this side, and that is going to create that tuck. And then I will do the same thing, finding the distance from here up to here, and do the same thing on that second tuck up here as well, which has the same depth as the first. So that is the first human giant sized pin tuck done. Now we are going to do another one. Also, I just thought you guys should know that Dora is objecting to being measured. Meaning that she was trying to eat my measuring tape, so I wrapped her in it. Don't eat it! Cat! And that's what it looks like with both tucks done. So let's go ahead and put it back on the dress form and see what the whole skirt looks like now. And there is my sleeping cat, I mean the skirt. Ta-da! So obviously it needs to be put onto the bodice and the waistband, but I'm loving the way the tucks look. I think they look just right. And also this feels like it could totally work for Dapper Day, so I might have to make myself a Dapper Day type skirt out of this fabric as well. So that is part one of this project all done, and I am so excited to get to the rest of it, which is namely really just the like bodice, waistband, sleeve, etc. portion, the top half of the dress, because honestly, like the rest of this project is pretty much like take straw hat, put little cherries on it. Unfortunately, I don't have red boots, and I'm not going to have a way to get red boots for this picnic, so I'm probably going to just wear brown boots like I did with Kirsten's birthday dress that I made last year. But yeah, I'm hoping that I can get all of the rest of this done in just like one additional video, because that's also approximately how much time I will have left to do this before the picnic, because tonight I am actually flying to England, and I'm going to be spending the next 10 days of my life in England. Now, that said, by the time you are seeing this, I'm already coming home. So around the time that you are watching this video, I will probably be diving right back into the Kirsten project. But what that means for you is that next week's like sewing vlog space video, as in my Tuesday video, is actually going to be an England vlog. So I am planning on bringing my camera along, bringing you guys along with me, and just taking you along on my trip with my mom around England. And I'm very, very excited about that. So hopefully you enjoy a travel vlog, because that's what you're going to get next week. But anyway, that's going to be it for me for this video. If you liked this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, or next week's England vlog, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube at least once a week, with generally my sewing vlogs out on Tuesdays, and sometimes additional costuming content out on Saturdays. But I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below, or you can send me a super thanks right here on YouTube. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Sharon, Mirage, Laura, Jean, and Janelle. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!